Peggy 16.
Hello everyone, it's your boy Gil, and I hope you had a great Tekken-filled weekend and you enjoyed watching your favorite players go at it during the Tekken World Tour. Speaking of the TWT, this weekend Katsuhiro Harada and the Tekken Project's game director Kohei Ikeda presented more Tekken 8 footage. In particular, we were shown an over 35-minute long video describing more details of Tekken 8's mechanics and their thought process behind the game as a whole. Since there's 35 minutes of info to parse through, let me first start with summarizing the facts we learned and try to explain them as well as I understand. Then chat about what this means for the future of Tekken, and finally, my personal thoughts on Tekken 8 so far. Let's do this. Three major gameplay mechanics were discussed, them being Recoverable HP, Rage, and the already infamous Heat system. Let's begin with Heat since other mechanics relate to it and it seems to be the big new centerpiece mechanic of the game. They've left us to conjecture about this new Heat system for a while now, so it's good to have some concrete info on it. The facts about Heat at this point are that it is a temporary powered up state for your character. You know someone is in Heat state because of the big sound and visual effect, and the character gains a blue flame effect. It is dependent on a meter called the Heat gauge. If you don't have the Heat gauge, you cannot enter the Heat state. I'm going to be saying Heat a lot. There are two main ways for one to enter this state. One of them is called Heat Burst, which is described by the game director Ikeda as a slamming attack that gives advantage on hit or guard. This Heat Burst attack can also be used in combos. The attacking part of the Heat Burst can be cancelled, and you will just enter the state in neutral. The other way for you to enter Heat state is by hitting your opponent with specific attacks that the developers assigned as a Heat Engager move. Ikeda said that on average, all characters have 5 Heat Engage moves. For emphasis, these moves have to hit, not be blocked to enter the Heat state. When you hit them with one of these engagers, your character will sprint in for massive frame advantage. So you've hit them with your coolest Heat Engager or decided to enter it in neutral. What are the benefits of this much talked about Heat state? Well, here we go. First of all, it unlocks special actions that you can only use in this state. The first one is a Heat Smash, which is described as a powerful attack. For example, here's Paul's Heat Smash, which is a crazy souped up demo man. The second action that's unique to Heat is Heat Dash, which allows you to cancel a Heat Engager and dash in. Ikeda mentioned that usually Heat Engagers are negative on block, but this will make them plus. On hit, it allows for a major combo instead. The second benefit of being in Heat state is that all your guarded attacks cause your opponent to take recoverable white chip damage. And third, it enhances a character's unique characteristics. In other words, it makes some existing moves and aspects of a character stronger. Ikeda said that this is unique to each character and is a way for them to make characters stand out more from one another and pushes their personality. They described Paul as a power-pushed character, and while in Heat, some plus-on-block charged attacks actually become guard breaks in Heat state. For King, they wanted to highlight him as the big muscle guy, so he gains armor on a dash where he normally doesn't. Still hanging in there in this desert heat? We're almost there. The last thing to discuss is the limitations on Heat. As I mentioned before, you can only enter this state if you have the particular meter. They didn't say it explicitly, but it seems you start every round with it. When you enter the state, the meter starts to count down and you have 10 seconds of Heat. This timer can be stopped as long as you keep attacking. They don't mention this additional detail, but during some examples, it looks like existing moves that received buffs from the Heat state, when used, eat up a chunk of the remaining time, maybe a second or so. Then there's a secondary resource only available within this state. They call it Heat Energy. I'll call them chains so I can use the word heat a little bit less. The icon is a literal chain and I can make 2 chains jokes. So remember those actions you can only take within Heat state, like Smash and Dash? You will use up these chains to do so. A Heat Smash will use up all remaining heat and chains, ending your Heat state, and a Heat Dash only uses up 1 chain. If you use it twice, you'll end your Heat state. And finally, in regards to these chains, you don't always get 2 with every Heat activation. Using a Heat Burst will only give you 1, whether on block or within a combo. Entering heat through an engager will give you the full 2 chains. Alright, that's all the basics of heat. Now let's talk about other important mechanics of Tekken 8. This section will be a little bit shorter, but is important too, of course. Then we can discuss our feelings and expectations now that we know more about the mechanics. They are introducing Recoverable HP to Tekken 8. As seen in the gameplay mechanics introduction video, they say a part of the damage taken by blocking certain big moves or aerial combos remains as recoverable gauge, which is indicated as gray HP on the health bar. You don't regain HP back over time passively, but instead by pushing your offense. Your health comes back by landing attacks or getting them blocked. You can erase chunks of the gray health with certain attacks, and in the video they then specify that low attacks do this in particular. Then we see Paul land a low on martial law. We don't know for sure if all low attacks have this effect and if it's solely reserved for lows. And relating to recoverable HP, later on Ikeda showed off improved power crushes and let us know that the full damage absorbed becomes gray health. Oh yeah! And last but not least, they also discussed the rage system for Tekken 8. It's been a stalwart of the franchise since Tekken 6, released in 2007 on consoles, and has become so iconic to the franchise that Kazuya brought the mechanic along to Smash Ultimate. In Tekken 8, you still enter Rage at low HP where your attacks deal more damage, and you gain access to Rage Arts, which will end your Rage state upon use as per usual. The major difference between Tekken 8's Rage and 7 is that they removed Rage drives entirely. Yes! Yes! So what does this all mean for the current direction of Tekken 8? Well, Harada hasn't really been shy about it. Their main keyword during development apparently is the word aggressive, and the game systems are aligned with this word. So far, both the heat system and recoverable HP both align with that aggression goal. Initially, when Harada started speaking on the aggressive keyword and nature of the game, I was pretty worried. From previous interviews, it sounded that he wanted Tekken 8 to be a game where players would just be brawling for most of the match, rather than defending through movement. At the North American Regional Finals, Harada and Michael Murray provided a bit more insight, but most of the mechanics were still up to our imagination. That's where my worries began to peak. Because of the lack of concrete info, I could only judge their trajectory from what came most recently, and that would be the last couple of Tekken 7 patches. Don't get me wrong, overall I think Tekken 7 is an incredibly balanced game, and probably the power level difference between the very strongest and weakest characters has been at an all-time low. Still, I've had my issues with plenty of changes they made, stuff like new tactics, their insistence of giving every character new moves every season, and particular balance decisions have made me pretty wary of the team. Now that we've finally received some concrete info and examples, I'm feeling a lot better about Tekken 8. I'm way more positive than negative right now. Something I'm really excited about in regards to Tekken 8 is that it looks like they're taking actual risks when it comes to changing things up. It's always a risk to make changes to long-standing franchises, particularly fighting games, but it's also important to try to evolve. We're all familiar with the phrase, changing things for the sake of change, and at the very least they seem to have a real intent behind each new change. It's hard to know if these changes will create a better and more fun game, but at the very least it seems like we're unshackling ourselves from Tekken 5. Developers have to navigate a fine balance with creating sequels. How much should it stay the same, and how much should it change to warrant being a new entry in a franchise? That's a whole larger conversation outside of the scope of this particular video. Maybe I'll make a video on that particular topic in the future, Oh yeah! The heat system doesn't look like it will be the whole Unga Badunga sort of mechanic we initially feared it would be. It doesn't give more frame advantage on basic attacks. Activating it with a heat burst only rewards one chain, and the best heat activation is by hitting someone with a heat engager. Gaining big momentum off a block or whiff punish seems like a fair and good reward to me. The 10-second timer being extended with keeping an offense doesn't strike me as particularly problematic right now. First of all, both players have access to the same mechanic, and the main reason why I'm not too worried about the 10-second timer is because of the issue of timing and predictability. The more you play and learn about Tekken, the more it becomes apparent that it's a game of timing. If the aggressor who's in the heat state is desperate to remain in that state, they'll be swinging a lot. This means that finding a particular counter hit, sidestep, backdash, or devastating duck can appear more often. Good players likely won't go whole hog on the offense while they're in heat, which then will of course cause their meter to count down. In the end, who knows how things will actually shake out in regards to heat, but currently it seems like it's a mechanic that will allow for some great mind games. I'm trepidatious but mostly excited about the idea of recoverable health. I think it's a cool way to encourage people to remain in a scuffle, but it's also not a gun to your head sort of mechanic where you're forced to press buttons on your opponent. Also, it reminds me of Bloodborne's rally system where after getting hit you could regain some HP by striking back. Obviously different games, but it's a fun similarity to one of my favorite games of all time. They also said that recoverable HP gets dished out from blocking large attacks, attacking while you're in heat state, and gets accrued from aerial combos. Maybe, just maybe, it will result in a game where it's not game over after getting launched once and maybe a second time. This all depends on final combo damage of course, but aerial combos dealing a portion of its damage as recoverable HP might make matches a bit less volatile, giving players just another chance that they might not have gotten in Tekken 7. And my main disappointment is that in an over 35-minute long video presented to their most hardcore audience, they didn't talk more about movement in the game. They shared some brief words about movement in their countering heat segment of the video, and we saw Paul backdashing one of Law's attacks and launching him. Still, it's something that a lot of longtime Tekken fans are anxious about, and showing off some sidesteps, backdashes, or just their philosophy on the subject would be very nice. Alrighty, that's about it from me. This is probably one of my lengthier videos, so I hope you were able to learn something or just enjoyed hearing my takes on things. Thank you so much for watching, and feel free to write a comment expressing your thoughts, consider subscribing, and I'll see everyone for the next episode.